You think you're living. You wake up, go to work, post your life online, and tell yourself you're on the right path. But deep down, you feel it, a quiet desperation, a life unclaimed. This video is not about motivation. It's a wake-up call. You're not living, you're surviving. And this is when your real life begins. You wake each morning certain that you and no one else command your day. You swipe away the alarm on a device programmed by companies that study your sleep patterns, rise to caffeine whose flavor profile was AB, tested to engineer craving, and scroll news feeds whose algorithms drip stories calibrated to confirm the prejudices you declared with every careless click. The day has not truly begun, yet 1,000 invisible hands already tug at the strings of your supposed autonomy. The illusion is exquisite precisely because you help maintain it. You brandish consumer choice as proof of sovereignty, never noticing that every option was pre-selected, priced, and packaged for you long before you arrived. The marketplace feels infinite, but its corridors form a labyrinth that guides you, Minotaur, like to one of several profitable exits. You pay, you post, you congratulate yourself on being decisive. In truth, you are decisive only within boundaries someone else has measured with cold precision. The illusion extends beyond shopping and screens. Your circle of friends, curated by convenience and social heuristics, reinforces the same norms. They urge caution when you propose a new path, not out of malice, but because your defection threatens the consensus that keeps them docile. Even your body, that last citadel of personalized experience, is manipulated. Nutrition guidelines reverse with each funding cycle. Pharmaceutical marketing recasts normal discomforts as billable disorders. Fitness trends shift so fast that by the time you master one routine, a fresher, more expensive doctrine has seized the spotlight. You think you are steering, yet every landmark on your route was placed there to shepherd you gently toward predictable behaviors that enrich people you will never meet. The education you revere as liberation was, in fact, your first training ground in obedience. From childhood, you were rewarded for repeating answers rather than formulating questions, for regurgitating history's sanitized narrative rather than investigating why entire epochs were omitted. Deadlines, grades, and standardized tests conditioned you to equate punctual compliance with merit. Once hired, you discover that the workplace is simply a more polished classroom. Titles replace grades, performance reviews replace report cards, and you still raise your hand, now metaphorically, to ask permission for holidays that celebrate victories unconnected to your private ambitions. When a supervisor praises you for being a team player, what he really celebrates is your willingness to submerge individual power beneath collective inertia. Observe politics, that grand theater where freedom is advertised most loudly. Campaigns bombard you with slogans of empowerment, yet victory depends less on persuading the informed than on agitating the apathetic. Candidates mine your data to trigger fear, hope, nostalgia, whatever lever moves you most efficiently to the polling booth. Once elected, they answer to backers whose investments were wagers, and you, the voter, receive ceremonial acknowledgement while tangible decisions drift behind closed doors. Still, you flaunt a ballot stub on social media, proclaiming civic pride, oblivious that the real transaction occurred months earlier in gala fund, razors you could never afford to enter. Even rebellion is commodified. Counterculture fashions arrive pre-distressed so you can broadcast non-conformity without risking genuine exile. Streaming playlists deliver righteous lyrics over corporate-owned airwaves, letting you chant resistance in headphones manufactured by the very conglomerates your songs condemn. You unbox Subversion one sponsored reel at a time, mistaking style for strategy, forgetting that profitable dissent is not dissent at all. It is market segmentation. Yet the most insidious dimension of the illusion lies within your own psyche. You craft narratives to rationalize stagnation. You delay ambitions until the economy stabilizes. You postpone hard conversations until emotions cool. You pledge to start living after the next milestone. In doing so, you outsource present agency to a mythical future that never arrives. Each deferment calcifies into habit. Each habit becomes a chain. You voluntarily clasp manacles forged from comfort, telling yourself they are bracelets of prudence. The greatest prisons have no locks because the inmates guard themselves, grateful for predictability masquerading as safety. To escape, you must first acknowledge that you're so called freedom has been cosmetic, a veneer applied to consent manufactured through distraction and incremental dependency. Do not waste energy resenting those who built the illusion. They merely exploited universal human laziness. Instead, turn the lens inward. Audit every belief: who benefits when you hold it, who suffers when you abandon it. Interrogate every routine: does it advance a personal conquest, or merely sustain the machinery of someone else's dream? Wherever the answer is the latter, sever the cord without ceremony. Freedom is not found in the passive absence of control, but in its active acquisition. You will be labeled selfish, reckless, even dangerous. Accept these accusations as confirmation that you are dismantling the invisible architecture that kept you compliant. True liberation demands the courage to embrace uncertainty, for nothing terrifies the overseers more than an individual who prefers risk to paternalistic security. Once you renounce the comforts that disguised your captivity, you clear the ground for deliberate strategy, ruthless self-interest, and the deliberate construction of personal power. Only then does life, in its raw and unmediated form, truly begin. The tragedy of the ordinary person is the conviction that goodwill guarantees reciprocity. You give more than you receive, stay late without pay, forgive slights without retaliation, and whisper to yourself that the universe keeps score. It does, but not in your favor. Power accrues to the one who tallies debts, not to the one who assumes they will be settled spontaneously. Strategic self-interest begins with the brutal principle that every interaction is an exchange of leverage, and any leverage you fail to seize will be taken by someone else. Consider your workplace. You are told it is a meritocracy where talent rises naturally, yet promotions trace invisible arteries of favoritism, data hoarding, and narrative control. The colleague who always volunteers for visible tasks is not altruistic, she is monopolizing spotlight. The manager who casually asks for your weekend plans is not friendly, he is mapping your boundaries, measuring how cheaply your free time can be purchased. You cannot dismantle this web by complaining about fairness. You outmaneuver it by cataloging each node of influence. Who approves budgets, who filters rumors to the executive suite, who quietly decides schedules, and ensuring every one of those nodes owes you something tangible. A favor, a secret, credit they must one day return. These are the currencies that purchase authority more reliably than competence. Strategic self-interest does not despise generosity, it weaponizes it. A time concession can trap an opponent in a coil of obligation. Give your expertise freely to the ambitious intern, then watch as her gratitude matures into loyalty. Just when the hierarchy needs disrupting, lend small victories to rivals so they underestimate your appetite, until the moment comes to demand a larger prize in exchange for continued harmony. Even kindness towards subordinates can be calibrated. Praise them openly to inflate their dependence. Criticize them privately to retain their hunger. The key is never to confuse calculated benevolence with sentimental charity. When your action does not advance a personal objective, resource, reputation, or reach, it is not generosity, it is waste. Your private life offers no sanctuary from strategy. Affection does not negate asymmetry, it merely obscures it beneath declarations of love. Partners negotiate chores, finances, even dreams. The one who frames these negotiations sets their boundaries. You frame by defining the problem first. How do we secure our future? Instantly shifts the conversation from present comfort to long-term investment, an arena where the disciplined planner holds superior ground. Romantic myths condemn such calculus as cold, yet relationships built on unmanaged expectations eventually fracture under the weight of silent resentments. By stating your value, your limits, and your ambitions early, you either attract a collaborator or expose a parasite. Both outcomes serve you. The vocabulary of self-sacrifice is the favorite weapon of those who fear your autonomy. Parents invoke duty, mentors evoke gratitude, society itself drapes rules in the language of moral debt. Strategic self-interest translates every sentimental charge into a ledger entry. When family demands compliance for the sake of tradition, you evaluate the request exactly as you would any contract cost. Benefit, opportunity foregone. Nostalgia has no numeric value, therefore it cannot tip the scale. This does not make you ungrateful. Gratitude is best expressed by surpassing those who nurtured you, not by shackling your trajectory to their outdated map of the world. Information supremacy is the spine of your new posture. Stop sharing plans prematurely. A goal spoken too early becomes a commodity for others to trade, ridicule, or steal. Instead, gather intel relentlessly. Listen more than you reveal. Let rivals describe their methods while you nod, seemingly absorbed. Their words will betray patterns you can disrupt at will. Carry no unnecessary digital footprints. Privacy is a fortress whose blueprints you should never post on the public square of social media. Even leisure reading can be strategic. Biographies of conquerors train you in ambition, while signaling nothing of your current designs to onlookers who assume you read merely for pleasure. Understand the arithmetic of reputation. One decisive triumph outweighs a dozen minor virtues. People remember the spectacle that clarifies hierarchy. So conserve energy for acts that reorder perception, negotiating a raise that shocks the department, executing a pivot that rescues a dying project, walking away from a stagnant alliance so abruptly it forces others to confront their dependency on you. Lesser days you may appear passive, indifferent, even lazy, let them think so. Their misjudgment is a cloak under which you assemble your resources. Self-interest must be adaptive, not brittle. Circumstances shift. Today's ally is tomorrow's rival and perhaps next year's ally again. Reserve the right to realign. Ideological rigidity signals predictability, and predictable actors are easy prey. Adopt principles only to the extent that they serve as instruments. When a creed obstructs advantage, discard it without apology. The world will label you inconsistent. Consistency is a luxury of those who neither innovate nor ascend. Yet strategy without self-knowledge becomes a maze with no exit. Audit your desires regularly to ensure they are truly yours. Many chase acclaim because childhood teachers applauded perfect scores, or pursue wealth because screen culture equates abundance with meaning. Ask, does this objective ignite restless fascination, or does it merely promise validation from spectators whose applause fades by nightfall? Goals borrowed from the crowd shackle you to the crowd's timetable. Goals distilled from private obsession generate stamina impermeable to external noise. Strategic self-interest is therefore the disciplined alignment of resources, time, skills, alliances, secrets, toward ambitions examined and re-examined until they stand uncorrupted by inherited fantasies. It will earn you accusations of arrogance. Arrogance is simply the name mediocrity assigns to visible momentum. The alternative is to wait, hat in hand, for a system designed by strangers to notice your worth. Transformation is not an awakening. It is an execution followed by an appropriation of the corpse's assets. The version of you that surrenders to comfort must be identified as an enemy, tried in a court of solitary conscience, and convicted without appeal. Sentimentality whispers that the accused deserves leniency because he carried you this far. Sentimentality lies. Every limitation you suffer today bears his fingerprints. The friendships maintained out of politeness that dilute your focus, the possessions accumulated to impress spectators who scarcely think of you, the skills left half finished because mastery demanded intolerable monotony. These indulgences feel harmless until you measure their compound effect on time. A resource no conquest can replenish. The first act of ruthlessness is intellectual draft, a manifest of liabilities masquerading as virtues, then declare them contraband. Execution proceeds in three theatres: environment, allegiance, identity. Begin with environment, for geography is destiny in miniature. The desk cluttered with relics of abandoned hobbies is a museum of hesitation. Burn it to the ground metaphorically by disposing of every item that does not accelerate your current objective. Let the room echo with emptiness until it rings like a tuning fork set to a single note of purpose. Stripped walls and an austere chair glare back at you, a silent audience that tolerates no distraction. This brutal minimalism is not aesthetic, it is an architecture of inevitability. When the eyes can rest nowhere, the mind must work. Next, allegiance. Most humans are loyal to the conditions that forge them. Even when those conditions now impede evolution, you must betray that loyalty. Observe your social circle as a general inspects troops. Who sharpens your ambition? Who blunts it? Who siphons it under the pretext of solidarity? Friendships of convenience are the most treacherous because their cost hides behind lauder and nostalgia. Announce no dramatic departures. Simply withdraw the currency of your attention until parasites starve. They will brand you cold. Accept the adjective as a metal. Ice preserves the valuable while rot consumes the sentimental. Family presents a sharper dilemma, for bloodlines are ropes soaked in the glue of obligation. Here, ruthlessness is not severing ties but renegotiating terms. Articulate your mission in language so stark that relatives must either align or step aside. Should guilt tactics emerge, stories of sacrifice, appeals to tradition, translate them mentally into economic propositions. They invested care, you repaid with gratitude. The account is settled. If they desire further returns, they must demonstrate relevance to the empire you are building. Anything less is emotional taxation without representation. Identity is the deepest theater, and its trenches are defended by memories masquerading as facts. You think you are shy because teachers once praised your quietness, or clumsy because childhood teammates laughed at your first misstep. These narratives are squatters occupying mental property that could house stronger tenants. Evict them with evidence. Choose a skill that contradicts your inherited self-image and pursue it with monastic repetition. Each incremental victory, an improved lift, a fluent sentence in a new language, a negotiation won, dislodges another brick from the fortress of former limitations. Document these victories obsessively. The record becomes a weapon when doubt attempts a counter, coup. Ruthlessness toward the self might appear pathological until you examine its alternatives. Gentle self. Help promises transformation through affirmation, yet the mirror knows the truth. A flattering lie is still a lie. Discipline framed as self-love tolerates the occasional indulgence. Indulgence replicates, metastasizes, and soon you are congratulating yourself for balance. While momentum bleeds out on soft cushions, only the scalpel of uncompromising standards carves a shape sharp enough to pierce inertia. The pain you feel is not injury, but the sensation of bonds snapping. Deploy rituals to institutionalize this cruelty. Rise before dawn, not because early hours possess magic, but because the body rebels against darkness, and that rebellion must be subjugated daily. Fast when society feasts. The gnawing hunger is an audible reminder that comfort is a bribe you no longer accept. Train the body beyond aesthetic goals. Muscles are less useful than the unshakable proof that you can command biology itself. While others measure progress in selfies, you measure it in the silence between heartbeats after a brutal set. Proof that your organs obey strategy, not whim. Financial ruthlessness is equally non-negotiable. Money is stored power, and power is the oxygen of autonomy. Audit every expense with the disdain of an inquisitor. Cancel subscriptions that medicate boredom. Liquidate trinkets whose only value is symbolic. Redirect the liberated resources into assets that reproduce. Each dollar conscripted into investment is a soldier carrying your flag into future battles, where you will need reinforcements. Others will ridicule your austerity until the day arrives when choices open to you are closed to them. On that day, their laughter will sound like the shuffling of prisoners. Beware, however, the counterfeit coin of performative ruthlessness. Social media celebrates extremity, rewarding those who broadcast 4 a.m. alarms and ice bath bravado. Public spectacle seeks applause, real rebirth seeks results. Operate in the penumbra between obscurity and myth, where deeds accumulate unobserved until their mass becomes impossible to ignore. The oak does not tweet its acorn stage. It deepens unseen roots, while storms dismantle the flamboyant vines around it. Victory over the former self invites the final crucible, sustaining the new regime. Revolutions fail when the rebels emulate the tyranny they overthrew, mistaking momentum for permanence. Schedule periodic purges of stagnation, questioning whether the systems that served last year still serve today. Burn outdated strategies with the same zeal once reserved for obsolete habits. Reinvention is not a milestone, it is a maintenance interval. Let complacency inch in, and yesterday's triumph becomes tomorrow's shackle. Continuous severance, continuous ascent. The phoenix is admired for rising, yet few note that rising is merely the consequence of something being relentlessly consumed by fire. The ashes are not memorials, they are fuel for the next ignition. Proof that annihilation is the seedbed of expansion, and expansion is the only proof that the old self truly died and did not merely retreat. Every virtue celebrated by society is a shadow of power, abstracted and sanitized for mass digestion. Courage is meaningless without power to act on it. Compassion, irrelevant if you cannot shield others from harm. Even wisdom, praised in sages and scholars, becomes impotent if it cannot shape events or defend itself from ignorance. The lie you have been sold is that freedom is an internal state, a feeling, a mindset, a choice to be content with less. But reality does not bend for contentment. It responds to power. And the moment you understand this is the moment you stop seeking peace and start accumulating force. Power is the ability to move the world around you, to bend outcomes toward your will without begging for permission. It is not reserved for tyrants or kings. It is the quiet capacity to walk away from disrespect, to say no without consequence, to chart a course and follow it unimpeded. The powerless disguise their submission in language that flatters their ego. They speak of being easygoing, non-confrontational, humble, and grateful for what they have. But gratitude unanswered from power is dependence. It is a hostage praising the warmth of his cell, while pretending he chose to live inside it. The structure of society is deliberately designed to convince you that power is either evil or unattainable. Popular media cast the powerful as villains, corrupt CEOs, ruthless politicians, domineering manipulators, while elevating the meek and morally pure as noble victims. But this narrative serves one purpose: to keep you docile. If you believe power corrupts absolutely, you will never reach for it. If you see those who wield it as tainted, you will sabotage your ascent. The truth is more unsettling: power does not corrupt. It reveals. It unmasks the discipline or chaos already living within you. What you do with power reflects whether your core is governed or hollow. The weak fear this mirror and therefore prefer to remain spectators. To begin acquiring power, you must first renounce the illusion that justice is automatic. Injustice is not a flaw in the system, it is the default. Those who wait for fairness wait forever. Your cause does not triumph because it is righteous. It triumphs because it is backed by strategy, leverage, and the will to enforce it. The myth of moral victory is a pacifier, something fed to the powerless so they can feel dignified while losing. The real world rewards those who shape the terrain, not those who complain about its slopes. Leverage is the architecture of power. If you cannot be replaced easily, you have leverage. If you can leave and others cannot, you have leverage. If you possess knowledge others need, but do not understand, you have leverage. These are the quiet weapons of the powerful, not shouting, not posturing, but options. And the more options you have, the fewer compromises you must make. Every compromise is a tax on freedom. The more you compromise to stay employed, loved, or included, the more you declare your powerlessness in currency others can exploit. Build power in silence. Announce nothing. Let your work accumulate weight until it becomes undeniable. While others share their dreams online hoping for validation, you sharpen your execution, offline where interruption cannot find you. The powerful are not the loudest in the room. They are the ones the room adjusts for. To gain this position, you must first become immune to social flattery. Compliments from the powerless are meaningless. They admire you not for who you are, for who they hope you won't become: too distant, too assertive, too unreachable. To maintain their comfort, they beg you to stay average, leave them behind. Emotional independence is the most underappreciated form of power. When you no longer require consensus, applause, or sympathy to proceed, you become incorruptible. The world loses its grip on you the moment you cease needing it to agree with your worth. This is not sociopathy, it is strategic detachment. You do not suppress emotion, you audit it. You do not act from feeling, you interrogate feeling for its utility. The powerful feel everything but obey only what serves. Power also demands territory, not merely physical but psychological and temporal. Guard your time with the ferocity of a sovereign. If you allow others to dictate your schedule, they dictate your mind. If you permit distractions to colonize your focus, your attention becomes an occupied state. Even thought is a resource subject to conquest. Most people think thoughts implanted by algorithms, advertisements, gossip, and fear. Reclaim your inner domain and defend it. Structure your hours. Choose your inputs. Let silence become your courtroom, where only thoughts that withstand interrogation survive. Financial power is not measured in income, but in detachment from dependency. The man who earns millions but must smile for a boss is poorer than the one who earns little and bends to no one. Money buys leverage only when paired with ownership of time, of process, of self. Power lies in the ability to reject offers others must accept. That is the moment you realize wealth is not a number, but a posture. There is a cost, of course. To become powerful is to become isolated. The air thins at higher altitudes. You will be misunderstood, resented, even feared. That is the tax on sovereignty. The powerful are never truly liked. They are studied, followed, imitated, and eventually opposed. But they are never ignored. Power rewrites the narrative. It renders apology optional. It removes you from the petty economies of status and into the arena where presence alone redefines the rules. While others negotiate identity with trending hashtags and borrowed outrage, you become the architect of consequence. Your actions gain gravity. You do not merely participate in events, you tilt them. Your mere silence in a room becomes a strategy. This is not mystique. This is what happens when you cease being a unit in someone else's machinery and become machinery of your own. You no longer exist as a variable to be managed, but as a force to be anticipated. And at that point, freedom is no longer an idea. It is your natural state, because the world cannot afford to ignore you anymore. This is when your real life begins. Not at the moment society says you are ready, not when someone gives you permission, not when you feel motivated, but when you reclaim ownership of yourself through power, precision, and ruthless clarity. The version of you shaped by comfort, guilt, and other people's expectations must die for the real one to rise. That death is not metaphorical. It is strategic, deliberate, and absolute. You've been told life is about balance, about waiting your turn, about being grateful for what you're given. The truth, the unfiltered, unsentimental truth, is that life only begins when you stop asking and start taking. You stop playing fair in a game that never was. When you prioritize leverage over approval, strategy over sentiment, results over reputation, only then do the walls of invisible prisons fall away. The world does not bend for the good, it bends for the capable. That capability is built brick by brick through ruthless discipline, strategic detachment, and calculated dominance. Not cruelty, not recklessness, but cold, intelligent force that answers to no one but your highest ambition. You don't owe anyone the old version of yourself, and you don't need to apologize for outgrowing people, norms, or ideologies that kept you docile. You were not born to fit in. You were born to impose shape, to carve, to conquer, to command. That begins the moment you decide your time is no longer up for negotiation. When every second becomes an investment, every word a weapon, every step a declaration, the moment you become undeniable on your terms.